Hello everyone, and welcome to my General Hospital official channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up.
The oppressive silence in the penthouse was a living entity, thick and heavy with unspoken accusations and the phantom scent of gunpowder. It was a silence that had fallen in the wake of a single, devastating gunshot, a silence that now felt more deafening than the blast itself. Carly Corinthos stood at the floor-to-ceiling window, her arms wrapped tightly around herself as if to physically hold the pieces of her world together. The glittering skyline of Port Charles sprawled before her, a tapestry of indifferent lights, each one a tiny beacon in a world that had, for her, just been irrevocably shattered. Behind her, the scene was one of controlled chaos. The police had come and gone, their yellow tape a garish scar across her elegant foyer. The forensic team had taken their samples, their flashbulbs popping like malevolent fireflies, documenting the place where her husband, Sonny Corinthos, had been shot. He was alive. That was the mantra she repeated in her head, a fragile life raft in a sea of terror. Alive, but in surgery. Critical condition. The words from the hospital, delivered in Dr. Lucas Jones's grim, professional tone, echoed in her mind. She could still feel the cold stickiness of Sonny's blood on her hands, a visceral memory that made her shudder. The elevator dinged, a soft, mundane sound that was utterly incongruous with the atmosphere. Jason Morgan stepped into the room, his presence an immediate anchor. His jaw was set, his blue eyes chips of ice, but Carly could see the storm of fury and fear swirling just beneath the surface. "Any change?" he asked, his voice low and gravelly. Carly shook her head, a single, jerky motion. "Nothing." Lucas said it would be hours. The bullet, it nicked the subclavian artery. There was a lot of internal bleeding. She choked on the last word, turning back to the window so he wouldn't see the tears that finally threatened to fall. She had to be strong. For Sonny. For Donna. For everyone. Jason moved to stand beside her, a solid, immovable pillar. "We'll find who did this, Carly." "We know who did it," she exploded, whirling to face him, her grief momentarily eclipsed by a white-hot rage. "It was John. John Jagger Cates. He came here, Jason. He stood in this room, with his badge and his self-righteous anger, and he threatened us. He said Sonny would pay for what happened to his brother. This is his revenge." Jason's expression darkened further. "Jagger's a cop. A decorated one. He's reckless, but this? An assassination attempt in a penthouse? It doesn't fit his MO. He'd want a public takedown, an arrest, a trial. People change. Grief changes them." Carly shot back, her voice trembling. "You didn't see the look in his eyes. It was pure hatred. He blames Sonny for Stone's death from 20 years ago, and he's decided justice is a bullet." She began to pace, her heels clicking a frantic, staccato rhythm on the marble floor. "We have to do something. We can't just wait for the PCPD to investigate one of their own. They'll cover for him. We need to act." "Acting without proof is what gets people killed," Jason stated, his logic infuriatingly calm. "We need to be smart about this. I have people looking into Jagger's movements, his finances, any recent communications. If he did this, we'll find the evidence." And then, he didn't need to finish the sentence. The promise of retribution was clear in his unblinking gaze. Carly stopped pacing, her mind racing down a different, even more treacherous path. What about the others? The list of people who want Sonny dead is extensive. Cyrus Renaud is still pulling strings from prison. There's Selena Wu's organization, the new players from the docks. What if this was a setup to make it look like Jagger? What if we're being played? Before Jason could respond, Carly's phone buzzed on the coffee table. She snatched it up, her heart leaping into her throat, hoping for news from the hospital. It wasn't the hospital. The screen showed a single, anonymous text message. "An eye for an eye. A brother for a brother." Her blood ran cold. She showed the phone to Jason. "It's him. It has to be. Jason took the phone, his fingers tightening around it. This is a mistake. He just made this personal. He handed the phone back, his decision made. I'm going to pay a visit to the PCPD. See what Detective Cates has to say for himself. Be careful, Carly implored, her anger giving way to a fresh wave of fear. He's dangerous. So am I, Jason replied, and with a final, grim look, he turned and left the penthouse, the silence descending once more, now filled with the ominous promise of a coming storm. Across town, in the sterile, brightly lit confines of General Hospital's ICU waiting room, the air was thick with a different kind of tension. It was the tension of fractured families and uneasy alliances. Michael Corinthos stood by the vending machine, staring at its garish lights without really seeing them, a cold cup of coffee forgotten in his hand. His father was fighting for his life on the other side of those doors, and the world felt tilted on its axis. His wife, Willow Corinthos, sat on a stiff plastic chair, her hand resting protectively on her swollen belly. Her face was pale, etched with worry not just for Sonny, but for the fragile peace that had held their family together. Michael, she said softly. You should sit down. You've been standing for an hour. I can't, he muttered, running a hand through his already disheveled hair. I just keep thinking. I spent so many years being angry at him. For the business, for the danger, for everything. And now, his voice broke. What if the last thing I said to him was in anger? Willow's heart ached for him. He knows you love him, Michael. A father always knows. Their quiet moment was shattered by the arrival of Drew Kane and Sam McCall. Drew's face was a mask of grim concern, while Sam's was flushed with a volatile mix of fear and fury. Any news? Drew asked, his voice low. Nothing, Michael replied, his shoulders slumping. Just waiting. Sam's eyes flashed. This is on Jagger Cates. I know it. He's been a ticking time bomb ever since he got back to town, obsessed with taking Sonny down. He thinks his badge gives him the right to be judge, jury, and executioner. Drew placed a calming hand on her arm. Sam, we don't know that for sure. Accusing a police detective without concrete evidence is a serious thing. Since when do you defend the people trying to kill our family? Sam snapped, pulling her arm away. Her history with Jason, her complicated ties to the Corinthos family, all of it boiled over in that moment. Cyrus tried to have Jason killed. Now Jagger tries to kill Sonny. How many more serious things do we have to endure before we stop playing by the rules? Because the rules are what separate us from them. Drew countered, his voice rising. If we become them, then what are we fighting for? We find the evidence, we take it to the DA, and we let the system work. Sam let out a bitter, hollow laugh. The system? The same system that let Cyrus run his empire from a prison cell? The system that let Nellie get away with her schemes for years? That system is broken, Drew. And while we're waiting for it to fix itself, the people we love are dying. The argument was cut short by the swoosh of the ICU doors. Dr. Lucas Jones emerged, his scrubs stained and his face etched with fatigue. Every eye in the room locked onto him. He's out of surgery, Lucas announced, and a collective, held breath was released. It was touch and go for a while. We repaired the arterial damage and removed the bullet. He's lost a lot of blood, and the next 24 hours are critical. But, he's a fighter. He's stable for now. A sob of relief escaped Willow's lips. Michael sagged against the vending machine, the strength leaving his legs. Can we see him? He asked, his voice hoarse. One at a time. For a few minutes only, Lucas said. He's sedated and on a ventilator. He won't be able to respond, but he may be able to hear you. Michael, you can go first. As Michael followed Lucas into the sterile unit, the tension in the waiting room shifted, but did not dissipate. The immediate fear for Sonny's life had lessened, but the question of what next now loomed larger than ever. Sam glared at Drew, the schism between her desire for immediate vengeance and his for due process now a chasm that seemed to stretch between them. Meanwhile, at the PCPD, the atmosphere was equally charged. Commissioner Jordan Ashford stood in the observation room, her arms crossed, watching through the one-way mirror as her detective, John Jagger Cates, was being questioned by Detective Harrison Chase. It was a formality, a necessary evil to maintain the appearance of procedure, but every line of Jordan's body was taut with frustration. Inside the interrogation room, Chase leaned back in his chair, his demeanor deceptively casual. "Come on, Jagger. Walk me through it again. You had a confrontation with Sonny Corinthos yesterday at his penthouse. What was the nature of that confrontation?" Jagger, his own badge sitting on the table between them like an accusation, met Chase's gaze without flinching. The nature of it was that he's a criminal who has evaded justice for decades. I was following a lead on his connection to the organized crime elements down at the docks. He didn't appreciate the questions. "So you threatened him?" Chase pressed, his tone mild. "I warned him," Jagger corrected, his voice tight. "I told him his reign of terror was coming to an end. It was a professional conversation between a police officer and a person of interest. A professional conversation that ended with you implying he was responsible for your brother's death?" Chase asked, raising an eyebrow. A muscle in Jagger's jaw twitched. The ghost of Stone Cates, the brother he'd lost to AIDS, a death made more painful by the love and loyalty Stone had held for Sonny Corinthos, was a wound that had never healed. "My brother's death has nothing to do with this investigation." "Doesn't it?" Chase leaned forward, his voice dropping. "Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like it has everything to do with it. You have a personal vendetta, Jagger. You come back to town after years, and your sole focus is tearing down Sonny Corinthos' empire. And now, less than 24 hours after a heated argument with him, he's lying in a hospital bed with a bullet in his chest. You have to see how that looks." "It looks like a coincidence," Jagger snapped. "Or a very clever frame job. I was at my desk doing paperwork from 7 p.m. until the call came in about the shooting. Half the squad room can verify that." "And the other half of the night?" Chase queried. "The time of the shooting is estimated between 9:15 and 9:45. Your whereabouts for that specific hour are fuzzy." Before Jagger could retort, the door to the interrogation room opened and Jason Morgan stepped in. His presence immediately sucked all the air from the room. He didn't look at Chase. His icy gaze was fixed solely on Jagger. "Morgan, this is an active interrogation," Chase said, standing up. "I'm not here to interrupt," Jason said, his voice dangerously quiet. He took a step toward the table, his eyes never leaving Jagger's. "I'm just here to deliver a message. To you, personally." Jagger leaned back, a smirk playing on his lips. "Is that a threat, Morgan? Right in the middle of a police station? You've got balls, I'll give you that." "It's a promise," Jason corrected. "You sent a text. An eye for an eye. A brother for a brother. You made this personal. So now, it's personal. When we find the proof, and we will find it, this badge won't protect you. You'll answer to me." The smirk vanished from Jagger's face, replaced by a cold, hard anger. "I didn't send any text. And I didn't shoot Sonny Corinthos. But you go right ahead and waste your time looking. While you're doing that, I'll be finding the real shooter, and I'll be putting your entire organization in a cage where it belongs." The two men stared at each other, a silent war declared in the space between them. In the observation room, Jordan Ashford closed her eyes and pinched the bridge of her nose. This wasn't just an investigation anymore, it was a powder keg, and Jason Morgan had just lit the fuse. While the men faced off at the PCPD, a different kind of battle was being waged in the quiet, booklined study of Laura Collins's home. The mayor of Port Charles sat opposite her son, Kevin Collins, a renowned psychiatrist, her face pale with a dread that had nothing to do with Sonny Corinthos' shooting. "He's back, Kevin," Laura whispered, her hands trembling as she clutched a teacup she had no intention of drinking from. "I saw him. Down by the waterfront. It was just a glimpse in the crowd, but it was him. I'd know that face anywhere, even after all these years." Kevin leaned forward, his expression one of profound professional and personal concern. Laura, you've been under an immense amount of stress. The election, the constant threats from Cyrus Renault, the general state of the city. It's not uncommon for the mind to play tricks, to manifest our deepest fears under such duress. This wasn't a trick. Laura insisted, her voice rising with a touch of desperation. It was him. It was Caesar Faison. Or someone who looks exactly like him. Faison is dead, Laura, Kevin said gently, but firmly. We know this. He died. His body was identified. The threat he posed died with him. Did it? Laura's eyes were wide, haunted by ghosts Kevin could only imagine. With Faison, there were always doubles, always schemes within schemes. What if he faked his death? What if this is another one of his long games? He always said he would own me, that he would destroy everything I loved. She thought of her children, her grandchildren, the city she had sworn to protect. The fear was a cold, sharp blade in her heart. Kevin sighed, choosing his words with care. The likelihood of Faison having survived is infinitesimally small. What's far more likely is that your subconscious, grappling with the very real and present danger of someone like Cyrus Renault, has latched onto a familiar, archetypal villain from your past. It's a coping mechanism. Your brain is trying to make sense of a chaotic threat by giving it the face of an old enemy. Laura wanted to believe him. She wanted to grasp the rational, logical lifeline he was offering. But the memory of that chilling glimpse was burned into her mind. I need you to do something for me, Kevin. I need you to use your contacts, discreetly. Look into the records of Faison's death. See if there were any irregularities, any whispers. I have to know for sure. I can't function, I can't lead this city. If I'm constantly looking over my shoulder for a ghost. Seeing the absolute conviction in her eyes, Kevin finally nodded. All right, Laura. I'll make some discreet inquiries. But I want you to promise me you'll also consider talking to someone. This burden, it's too heavy for you to carry alone. As Laura left, only slightly reassured, Kevin sat back in his chair, a frown creasing his brow. He had been so sure he could explain it away as stress-induced paranoia. But Laura Collins was one of the strongest, most clear-sighted people he knew. If she was this convinced, a sliver of doubt, cold and unwelcome, began to worm its way into his own mind. Back at General Hospital, the drama was unfolding on another floor entirely. In a private room far from the ICU, Nina Reeves was putting on a masterclass in feigned concern. She stood by the bedside of her daughter, Charlotte Cassadine, who was recovering from a recent, minor procedure. But Nina's attention was only half on Charlotte. The other half was fixed on the hallway, waiting. How are you feeling, sweetheart? Nina asked, smoothing Charlotte's hair back from her forehead. Tired, Charlotte murmured. When can I go home? Soon, my love. Soon, Nina soothed. Her ears perked up as she heard the familiar, hurried footsteps she'd been waiting for. Right on cue, Valentine Cassadine appeared in the doorway, his face a mask of paternal worry. Papa! Charlotte said, her face lighting up. Valentine rushed to her side, kissing her forehead. My darling girl. I came as soon as I heard. He then turned his gaze to Nina, and the warmth in his eyes cooled considerably. Nina. Thank you for staying with her. Of course, Nina said, her voice dripping with a saccharine sincerity that made Valentine's skin crawl. She's my daughter. We have to stick together, don't we? Especially in times of crisis. She paused, letting the words hang in the air. I heard about Sunny. It's just awful. The violence in this city, it's why I worry so much about Charlotte's safety. And yours. Valentine's eyes narrowed almost imperceptibly. He knew Nina too well. Every word out of her mouth was calculated, layered with subtext. We are perfectly safe, he said, his tone clipped. You needn't worry yourself. But I do, Nina insisted, moving closer to him, lowering her voice so Charlotte wouldn't hear. I worry about all the entanglements. The business with Selena Wu, the tension with the Corinthos family. It puts a target on your back, Valentine. And anything that threatens you, threatens our daughter's stability. There it was. The not-so-subtle dig. The reminder that she held a piece of his world, a piece he cherished above all else, and she would not hesitate to use it as leverage. My business dealings are my own, Nina, Valentine said, his voice a low, warning growl. And they have nothing to do with Charlotte's well-being. I suggest you focus on your own affairs. How is the invader these days? Still trafficking in libel and innuendo? Nina's smile was sharp enough to draw blood. We report the truth, Valentine. No matter how inconvenient it may be for some. And the truth has a way of coming out, doesn't it? About all sorts of things. Her gaze was pointed, a clear reference to the countless secrets Valentine himself held. The standoff was broken by the arrival of Anna Devane, who looked harried and carried the weight of the city on her shoulders. Valentine, I need a word, she said, her eyes flicking briefly, and with clear distaste, to Nina. Of course, Anna, Valentine said, relieved for the interruption. He gave Charlotte one more kiss. I'll be right outside, my love. Once in the hallway, Anna didn't waste time. The gun used in the shooting on Sonny Corinthos was a ghost gun. Untraceable. Professional. Valentine nodded, his mind already working. This was not a crime of passion. This was a planned hit. My thoughts exactly, Anna said. Which is why I'm talking to everyone with the means and the motive. Where were you tonight, Valentine? Valentine let out a short, humorless laugh. Really, Anna? You think I shot Sonny Corinthos? To what end? He and I have reached a perfectly amicable and profitable understanding. His chaos is bad for business. My business. And what business is that, exactly? Anna pressed. Your legitimate holdings at ELQ? Or your more speculative investments with Selena Wu? I am a businessman, Anna. I diversify my portfolio, Valentine deflected smoothly. As for my whereabouts, I was in a meeting with my financial advisors at the Metro Court. From 7 o'clock until well after the shooting was reported. You can verify it with a dozen people. Anna studied him, her detective's eyes missing nothing. She knew he was lying by omission, but his alibi was likely rock solid. Very well. But if you hear anything, Valentine, anything at all about new players in town or old grudges being settled, I expect you to come to me. This city cannot withstand another gang war. As Anna walked away, Valentine's phone vibrated. He pulled it out and looked at the screen. It was a text from an unknown number, just like the one Carly had received. But this one was different. The king is wounded. The board is clear. Make your move. Valentine's blood ran cold. He quickly deleted the message and shoved the phone back into his pocket, his heart hammering against his ribs. This wasn't just about Sonny. He was being drawn into a game, and he had just been designated a player. The question was, by whom? The final act of the day's tragedy was playing out in the dim, cluttered back room of the Savoy. Tracy Quartermain, her regal demeanor looking frayed around the edges, stood over a locked filing cabinet, her hand trembling as she tried to fit a key into the lock. The room was a monument to her brother, the late, great Edward Quartermain, and it smelled of old leather, dust, and secrets. She'd had the dream again. The same one that had been plaguing her for weeks. Edward, not as the frail old man he'd been at the end, but in his prime, standing right here in this room, pointing a trembling finger at this very cabinet and whispering a single, urgent word, betrayal. Tracy had dismissed it as indigestion, as stress, as the foolish fancies of an overtired mind. But with the shooting of Sonny Corinthos, a sense of impending doom had settled over her. The Quartermains had been targeted before. Their wealth, their power, their name, it made them a target. And Tracy's instincts, honed over decades of corporate and familial warfare, were screaming that the two events were connected by an invisible thread. The lock finally gave way with a rusty click. Tracy pulled open the heavy drawer, her eyes scanning the rows of neatly labeled files. Business contracts, property deeds, old stock certificates, nothing out of the ordinary. She was about to dismiss the dream once and for all as nonsense when her fingers brushed against something rough at the very back of the drawer. It wasn't a file folder. It was the spine of a book. She pulled it out. It was an old, leather-bound ledger, its cover embossed with the Quartermain family crest. It was a type of book the family hadn't used for official record-keeping in over 50 years. Her heart began to pound a frantic rhythm against her ribs. With a deep, steadying breath, she opened it. The pages were filled with Edward's distinctive, flamboyant script. But it wasn't a record of business transactions. It was a journal. And as Tracy's eyes scanned the entries, her blood ran cold. It detailed a secret partnership Edward had formed decades ago, a silent, lucrative, and highly illegal business arrangement with a shadowy foreign entity. The profits from this venture had been funneled back into the Quartermain fortune, providing a crucial infusion of capital that had saved the family empire during a financial crisis in the late 80s. But it was the name of Edward's silent partner that made Tracy's legs give way. She stumbled back, collapsing into a worn leather armchair, the journal falling from her numb fingers onto the floor. It wasn't just a name from the past. It was a name that was, according to this journal, still very much a part of the Quartermain legacy. The partner had a son. A successor. And according to Edward's final, paranoid entries, that successor had recently made contact, hinting that it was time for the family to reunite. Edward had written a single, terrified sentence that was now burned into Tracy's soul: he doesn't just want his money. He believes he has a claim. A claim to everything. Tracy looked at the name again, her mind reeling. This was no mere financial secret. This was a time bomb, one that had been quietly ticking away at the very foundation of the Quartermain family for generations. The shooting of Sonny Corinthos was a distraction, a flashy piece of street theater designed to draw everyone's attention while the real threat moved in the shadows, preparing to strike at the heart of the establishment itself. She had to tell someone. But who could she trust? This secret was too big, too dangerous. Picking up the journal with trembling hands, she knew one thing for certain: the war for Port Charles had just begun on a second, even more terrifying front. And the first shot had been fired not with a gun, but with the turning of a page in a forgotten ledger, revealing a betrayal so deep it threatened to tear the entire city apart. The morning in Port Charles began in that familiar way where tension hovered in the air before anyone spoke a single word. At General Hospital, the corridors felt unusually quiet as Elizabeth walked toward the nurse's station, clutching a file she wasn't sure she wanted to open. She stopped when she saw Finn standing there, looking worn from a night without sleep. "You're here early," she said softly, placing the file down. Finn exhaled. "I couldn't stay home. Not today. Not with everything going on." Elizabeth studied him for a moment before replying, "It's going to be a long day." "I can feel it." Finn nodded, though he wasn't sure if she meant the same thing he did. Across town at the Metro Court, Carly stepped out of the elevator with purpose. She spotted Jason sitting at the corner table, staring at a mug of coffee he hadn't touched. Carly approached and shook her head. "You're doing that thing again." Jason glanced up. "What thing?" Carly crossed her arms. "The silent brooding that makes everyone think the world's ending." Jason looked back down at his coffee. "Depending on what we find out today, maybe it is." Carly slid into the seat across from him. "Then we handle it the same way we always do. Together." He didn't answer, but the look in his eyes said enough. At the Quartermain mansion, Olivia burst into the living room clutching her phone. Ned was sitting on the couch going through paperwork when she announced, "You will not believe who just called." Ned raised an eyebrow. "Should I brace myself?" Olivia paced, speaking rapidly. "It was the board. They've moved the ELQ emergency session to today. This afternoon." Ned set his papers aside. "But we weren't supposed to meet until Thursday." "They're trying something." Olivia nodded emphatically. "Which is exactly why we can't walk into that meeting without knowing who set this in motion." Ned sighed. "Tracy. It has to be Tracy. Olivia frowned. I'm not so sure this time. At the safe house, Anna stood by the window, hands clasped behind her back as Valentine entered. You're awfully quiet, he commented, hanging his coat on a chair. Anna didn't turn around. There's something you need to know. Something the WSB is bringing to Port Charles today. Valentine moved closer. Tell me. Anna inhaled slowly. A name surfaced in the investigation. A name we thought we'd buried long ago. Valentine's voice dropped. Who? Anna finally turned, her expression heavy. A man connected to both Victor and Pikeman. And he may already be in Port Charles. Valentine stared at her. Then we need to find him before he finds us. Anna shook her head. It may already be too late. At Sonny's penthouse, Dex stood near the fireplace shifting from foot to foot while Sonny poured himself a drink. You're nervous, Sonny observed. Dex cleared his throat. There's something happening on the docks tonight. Something big. And I think it's connected to what you've been tracking. Sonny lifted the glass to his lips. The shipments. Dex nodded. Yeah. But the guy running point? We haven't seen his face. He's using intermediaries. Sonny narrowed his gaze. Whoever he is, he's getting bolder. Dex hesitated before asking, You want me there tonight? Sonny set his glass down. I need to be there. But you're coming with me. And Dex, keep your head clear. This one's going to get messy. Meanwhile at the hospital, Jocelyn stormed into the cafeteria, nearly bumping into Trina. Whoa, Trina said, catching her friend's arm. What happened? Jocelyn dropped into a chair. My mom. She's hiding something. And it's big. Trina sat across from her. Carly always hides something. That's practically her brand. Jocelyn didn't smile. No. This is different. She was on the phone earlier, talking about someone coming to town. Someone that could change everything. Trina frowned. Did she say who? Jocelyn shook her head. I only heard the tail end. She said, we can't let Jason find out before we're ready. Trina's eyes widened. Oh! That is big. At Curtis and Portia's home, Portia sat at the kitchen table reviewing medical charts when Curtis wheeled himself in. You've been at that for hours, he told her. Portia sighed. It's a distraction. A terrible one, but still. Curtis moved closer. From what? She met his gaze reluctantly. The test results they're releasing today. I don't know what it's going to mean for us. Curtis placed his hand over hers. Whatever it says, we face it together. Portia nodded, though the worry remained etched on her face. I just want answers. Real answers this time. Back at the hospital, TJ approached Molly outside the lab. You sure you want to do this now? He asked gently. Molly folded her arms tightly. I have to. We can't move forward without knowing where we stand. TJ cupped her cheek. No matter what the results say, I'm not going anywhere. Molly kissed his hand. I know. But I need today to be the day we stop living in uncertainty. TJ nodded. Then we'll face the truth. Together. At the police station, Dante flipped through a stack of reports when Chase walked in. Got something for you, Chase announced. Dante looked up. Please tell me it's good. Chase shook his head. Depends on your definition of good. We got a hit on the fingerprint lifted at the safe house break-in. Dante stood abruptly. And? Chase placed the file on Dante's desk. The prints belonged to someone with connections to Pikeman. Someone dangerous. Dante opened the file and froze. No way, he muttered. Chase leaned in. You recognize him? Dante's jaw clenched. Yeah. Too well. Back at the Metro Court,